So Vikas, thank you for coming on the Hey Anshuman podcast. Why don't you tell us what you do?
Well, I'm a development economist in training.
Right.
I'm working with the University of Chicago's Data Center for Development, handling their research and policy.
Right.
All through and through, I'm development, academic development economics,
Cool.
background.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, multiple hats. I'm a son of a farmer,
Yeah.
friend of this podcast show.
So you've been in your village for the past 4 months. How's that been? How's the corona or the fear of corona in your village?
Past few months, like precisely about 3.5 months in my village, it's been kind of crazy. It's a difficult time. It's a crazy time, right? In a way, I was I would almost counted it as a luxury. It's when about the significant majority of the humanity was locked inside their houses, just like 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom kind of houses.
Yeah.
I had a privilege to hike daily, go to the farm, and not be restricted to the house, roam around freely in my village and around the villages.
Yeah.
So it was so literally in the difficult times, although it's a poor setting, it was actually a luxury. And so,
Yeah.
how the perspective changed with times. So that's the the kind of experience of that. But then so in terms of corona fears, thankfully, until a couple of weeks back, there hasn't been reported cases nearby, and so everybody was everybody was definitely in fear in terms of we knew this is this is something that can come.
Right.
Also, it's a new thing, so everybody was afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of villages were closed. People it's kind of local policing that happened multiple places. I think in multiple countries, starting with China, that people just close their door, the roads that link villages to the main roads.
Really?
Yes.
They closed that road?
Yes.
So there was no transportation to the city?
There was no transportation to the city for at least for first few weeks. Then police probably intervened and said okay, you cannot completely.
So that must have been in the main lockdown, first 21 days.
So
no
first,
transportation at all.
First lockdown when everybody was also the fearfulness was at the highest during that, and then things are getting relaxed.
And it also got religious in the beginning, right?
Absolutely,
because all the media channels associating the event to that Tablighi cult that was in Nizamuddin. So
it's funny, right? The one rumor saying that but the particular community is probably going and spitting in the water bodies. I'm okay.
I heard that rumor. My parents were like, oh, these guys, look at them. ये तबलीगी वाले हैं, थूक रहे हैं सबके यहाँ जा जाके. I'm like, who will do that? Who is going to go to everyone's house and say, hey, I'm here to spit. Can I
No, and then the craziest part of this I found is okay, so imagine Delhi, the same rumor, and I was 1,500 kilometers away from you, and similar thing, right? So either of the two things, right? Either Tablighi was so coordinated that they had 1 million people going house to house and splitting, or of course there is a pretty centralized effort by particular IT.
I think Tablighis were very coordinated. I think they had a whole system reaching every village.
Yes.
Probably Tablighi are the same people who do the census.
Yes.
Because they're like, okay, have you reached Vikas's village?
Yeah.
Have you spit in his food?
Yeah.
So probably they had a central control room or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird to see because it was a new phenomenon, right? In our modern times, we've never seen a disease spread so much.
Yeah.
And then the entire world come to a standstill. And the biggest challenge that becomes very prevalent is whether it's in the national media or even in your own household is misinformation. Nobody knows anything.
Yeah.
Even experts don't know anything because it's happening for the first time.
Yeah.
So there are different models that try to predict, it's going to be 60,000 or 80,000 or 800,000 cases. But nobody really knows.
Yeah.
And there were some models which had predicted, I remember there was a Princeton model which said 40 crore cases in India by September or October.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's been very true.
Yeah.
Even the Delhi serological survey they've done.
Yeah.
They're predicting 23-24%, right?
Yeah.
That 24% people have had corona so far. That is what they're predicting.
Yeah.
It looks a little unlikely. What do you say?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I was at the first, right? It wasn't shocking because I was in New York and few other places. Like when they did the surveys like 2 months ago, the numbers were pretty similar. But then New York was like really badly affected as compared to Delhi, and so it was like little bit shocking when I saw that number. And so, well, it seems again, as you said, like this is new to us, and like we are learning. So, like any new findings, any new reports, any new numbers, like we are learning. This is in the learning stage. But it seems that like well, what some doctors are saying, it like in the serological surveys in particular, the immune response of dengue can be captured as a immune response of COVID, and given that like well in Indian cities dengue is such a prevalent, and so well large number of population would have had dengue in
Really?
in last let's say 5 or 7 years or 10 years.
So in the last I had dengue was in 2014.
Yeah.
But let's say dengue like spreads every year.
Yeah.
But even then, like it spreads to what, like 10,000 people in a year, right?
Yeah.
So that's not much, and it's not contagious. Like it has to be through a mosquito. It's not like person to person.
Yeah.
So let's say in the last 5, 6 or 10 years, let's say 2 lakh people have had it.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 lakh.
Yeah.
But then this finding that comes and says like 45 lakh people.
Yeah.
Or 46 lakh people have.
Yeah.
It cannot just be dengue, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, but then so the point here that would come is, well, we just know it like it's misidentified dengue as one thing. I mean, so then second question can be like, well, are there something else like a few other, kind of diseases that like it like the immune response to that, take it as that. So that's number one. And secondly, in terms of overall as well, like not doing to the specific India relevant or Delhi relevant issues, the false negative in serological surveys in general people say as higher for multiple
it's quite
right? Like, and so that's why. But then again, like so, if we just still want to do like deductions based on that, like I would probably still come with something like 15% number, right? Like it's I mean, that's again still
that seems
pretty large.
But
I mean, like with to be very frank, anything related to this disease, like my first answer always been like, well, we don't know. And then like given that we don't know anything, like fine, let's speculate, but we are just speculating.
And there's a lot of false correlation that comes out, like spurious analysis. People saying, oh, probably in the rainy season it will spread less because the virus becomes weaker due to moisture. Because they studied like this data from the 1918 flu, the Spanish flu in Bombay. And they noticed that, it was high in summers. And then when it started raining, it went down. And then it comes back in November or whenever it stops raining in October probably. So the analysis is key, it doesn't spread much in the rainy season. But it just could be that because it's raining, people don't go out. So it spreads less.
Yes.
So the virus has nothing to do with moisture.
Absolutely.
It's just that people don't move around.
No, yes, of course. Like, well, taking like misleading causations with correlations. That's what it is. I mean, like, to be very frank, right? Like, whoever got the CM's post, let's say just month before, they like, well, you could basically say that one person got COVID, right? It's a correlation causation like stuff. And I mean, like many like similar people were also saying that there was like well-identified studies that in summer the flu gotten less, right, with the Spanish flu, particularly in the US and those. And so that's why like I mean even when Donald Trump joked around that like summer it is going to disappear completely. It had like some like few percent of like some evidence base, but
probably people were just taking summer off, so it was spreading a little less. Like they were just going to the village or like going away from big cities in the summer. Because the schools closed down. So they were taking kids out. Like if you have to follow the old pattern, like disease pattern of, or the patterns of older diseases, like Spanish flu or any flu, basically in the 50s, 60s, 80s, 90s. It could just be that people move away from the cities for a while because it's the schools are closing and everything, universities are off. And they just take off. So it spreads less in the cities where the documentation is higher. And so you're reading the data as, it spreads less in the summer.
Quite well. I mean, so that's the best case estimation, right? Like, I mean, second thing is like, so I mean, there is a reason it's a novel virus, right? Like, I mean, like, I'm like ready to be agreed that like, the studies were perfect. Like none of this happened, and it was actual causation that in that particular, let's say, virus for the flu actually died during summer. But then this is well, it's a new virus, and like by definition, limited about it, and so just don't just like look at the old studies and do the extrapolation from there.
Yeah, it's weird because there's no information basically. It's come from nowhere.
Yeah.
And it's just like, people are just like...
Yeah, and so people are scared, and that's why. So the two most important questions that I think people are asking around this, and what's going to be the biggest impact of this is like how societies are changed. Right?
Yeah.
And so the reason how societies are changed is like a lot more important. Is of course, so there are, to be very frank, right now sitting here, right? Like if people ask what are the two most important impact of this,
right?
People will say it's economy, like loads of people, like unemployment and other things,
right?
And then the health impact, like millions people dying, right? But then to be very frank, in the longer range of the history, these are not going to be the most important impact. And so the people say that like the way society changed, right? Like during because of this, and then this becomes the defining moment of that change, are going to be the most important. And so like the reason I'm saying that there are two direct way it will be impacted, right? One is of course technology and more prevalence of technology on human society, right? Like tracking devices, apps to track people, right? And that.
We've already seen that in China, right? They have like provinces where they're like cities where they're tracking literally everything you do.
Absolutely.
Like your face is being tracked, and like no matter where you go in the city, the government knows what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. All the time. And so with COVID, what's happening is like, it's actually becoming like open license, right? Like you're giving government right now the right to just like, track me completely, right? It's with a good intention from the government side, but then like what history tells us is like, once you give that out, it's not pretty easy that like, it never happens that like, wartime rules does not change once the war is end. So that's one way, like on the technology, and then more and more government involvement in the personal lives and technology, particularly tracking technology and like tracking particular individuals. So that's number one. Number two is this openness to accept, like, so the society changed the way that so the fearfulness also leads to need of having somebody as authoritarian, like who can give you comfort that like, I'm going to solve this problem for you, right? And so that mindset, anyway, it's like it's pretty high in the.
But don't you think that I was also of the belief that probably people will lean towards more authority. But I do have a feeling that since a lot of countries already have authoritarian leaders, it might just open people's eyes to believing that probably authority is not the best answer. Right? Like what you're seeing in the US, for example, Trump's ratings are falling, and it has much to do with coronavirus. Not like, there's this Black Lives Matter protest also.
Yeah.
But mostly the mishandling of coronavirus, and now that it's affecting the economy as well.
Yeah.
So we're seeing his ratings plummet even in southern states, right?
Yeah.
So, and we've seen like Boris Johnson do a little less right-wingy thing, like little less authoritarian things.
Yeah.
So when authoritarians are in charge already, and people think they are the ones who have messed it up, then probably they might have a change of, not heart, but change of belief probably.
So in terms of like voter behavior, that's quite possible. But then what I was saying is like, so because authoritarian regimes are there already, the rule changes, right? And the way they will use this rule changed, like during this pandemic.
So you're saying they'll consolidate power?
Yes. And then like changing the rules and consolidating the power, that will last much longer.
Yeah.
I mean, like US, right? Like to be very frank, I mean, again, I'm completely exaggerating everything. Like just like, let's speak hypothetically.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, so if the pandemic is there, voting doesn't happen. Right? Like, it gets really bad. Like, and so there are like some limitations with the voting, or like they don't allow postal votes and other things. Right? Like, I mean, some of these things can be very easily misused.
Plus we seem to be going for elections in Bihar as well. Like,
yeah,
I don't think the pandemic is going to affect elections in any way.
Yeah.
It's going to affect the economy, but not the elections.
Yeah, no, but then like, so no, here very well. Like, so let's take a case of Bihar. If let's say government decide that like, the current CM, we just want to continue or something like that, or rule through the governor, it's a pretty perfect time to just say that like, it's a pandemic.
Yeah.
right? I mean, right now they want to go voting, but then like if they just want to decide, and like
they could have said that, oh, we are delaying the elections by 6 months or whatever.
Yeah.
I think opposition parties will also agree.
Yeah.
They already made the statement, some of the opposition parties in Bihar, that they're fine with delaying elections.
Yeah.
So that would have made more sense.
Yeah.
But apparently it's not happening right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so my only point here is like, so there are uncertainty. Okay, and this kind of crisis opens multiple ways for authoritarian government to change rules, right?
True, yeah.
And like some of that can be just long lasting. And so this is like, so these are the two major points. Like when it's technology and like absolute more and more incursion of technology on daily lives,
right?
And like going that data directly to the government. Like it's now, it's not, I mean, like of course like Facebook and everybody attract me, but then at least in theory they said like we never give it data to government. Like now it's a step further. It's even more like detailed surveillance, and then data directly go to the government, or like somebody can monitor me that. Like, so one that, and second, the kind of other authoritarian or other rule changes that governments can bring in can be long lasting.
Yeah. No government is gonna say, okay, I'm gonna have less power from now on, like less access to your data, less information about what you're doing. Yeah, I think that's a valid point. Also, the argument from the government side is that there's no other way to deal with it than by collecting more information about you, right?
Oh, yeah.
For now.
Yeah.
So they have a valid argument.
Absolutely.
But obviously the argument is about giving up.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to give up.
Yeah.
Like we saw in when after 9/11, right? Yeah. They sort of had a Patriot Act and a lot of other things. So the US government started collecting a lot of data.
Yeah.
But when Obama came with the whole pitch of, withdrawing troops and not entering wars or whatever, even he didn't give up any, surveillance on citizens.
Yeah.
It like Snowden.
Yeah.
The whole case happened under Obama. Yeah. So I don't think any government likes to give.
Yeah.
Like give up.
No. So history is pretty clear on that. Yeah. Like it's just So one thing we definitely know is like there is enough evidence around that like once power is consolidated, like nobody, like governments don't generally wants to, or rulers in general don't want to give away the power. It's
we've never met a lenient guy named Adolf, have we? No. That is yet to happen. Probably one day we will.
Well, fingers crossed.
Yeah. So how's the situation in your village now?
Well, so things are now getting little worrisome. What's happening in like many southern states, at least so any numbers that we count in India and across the globe about the positive cases of COVID-19,
right?
I take it as a pinch of salt because it's actually difficult to identify.
Yeah.
So what happens is this, right? Once you have more than few thousand cases, it's very difficult to track and trace.
Yeah.
And so even if you actually increase like loads of number of tests, it's not enough to actually capture the number of cases, right?
True.
So given that, like even like understanding that, I don't want to make any comparison, but it seems like many southern states, including Maharashtra now, like recent days, Andhra and like of course Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, like second surge right there, right? And it's and in rural India, like Maharashtra in particular, now the cases are increasing. So there are 5-10 kilometers from my village, there are like cases, and then people are being taken there. And so, again, so it's a worrisome situation. Also, for last 4 months, rural India is also predominantly poor.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, it's a livelihood situation. And
right.
Like seeing some of these numbers as well as like seeing the people, like, so being, most of them go on informal sector jobs, and like not being on jobs for 4 months, it can be like life-changing episode for many people, right? So it's a both way there, and so people are trying to go and like earn their livelihood, and then like this risk is going up, and so doing the fine balance between two is going to be extremely difficult, and so that's why it's going to be challenging. But and so it's now coming around the villages. There are two ways people see what would happen to the rural India. Like one way to say would be like, just because rural India generally don't keep their doors locked, and then like people mingle and come around, go like more freely. They don't know the way to just like keep to yourself.
Right.
It might spread with like a lot more speed. That's hypothesis number one. Hypothesis number two, there is like the congestion is less in general as against cities, and so I mean, I hope.
I've always felt rural India or like rural areas in general are better placed at avoiding or preventing contamination than urban slums. I think urban slums are the worst.
Oh yeah, it's just a proximity thing, right? Like it's So
there's
like,
no space and like people
absolutely.
sharing rooms and stuff.
Yeah.
So probably when a wave is stronger in cities, especially in a developing country like ours, So if the contagion is very high, it's like spreading quite fast in cities, and you notice that in the beginning it was like a rich man's disease, right? People who traveled by air.
Yeah.
But then eventually it was going to get into urban slums, which it got, right? But now I was of the opinion that they should have let people go to their villages, because it's easier to isolate in villages than it is to do it in slums, because you have to meet the other person.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So in theory, yes. And then people, like government realized it little less, right? Like little late. And then they did open it to villages. But then now we also see that, like, well, I've been seeing some data that like the reverse migration again starts. So like people, stopping, and then like people are again like going back from like villages, because it's again like, so the livelihood question. I mean, we have had like one of the hardest lockdown anywhere in the globe.
Correct.
It was really hard and harsh lockdown, and we are like predominantly poor country, and like livelihood, and so there comes a time when people just say that like, well, we are going to die anyway. It's that's the life choices that it comes to, and then it's
literally a matter of life and death. Like going to work is a matter of either don't go to work, have no income and sit at home, or go to work, earn some money. It's not even great amount of money. Earn little money, probably like 100 rupees a day or 200 rupees a day, but also risk your life.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That's the like. I mean, it's very hard choices.
It is. Yeah. And probably now would be a good time for the government, or if not for the government, for the opposition to actually say that we need a comprehensive national health insurance, or like investment in our healthcare, because literally we have. Like, if you're poor, you have nowhere to go.
Well, so I would say it's like I have a mixed opinion, right? Like, so what government would say is like, well, we, at least on paper, right? We do have insurance, and like, the Modi Care or Ayushman Bharat, as we call it, it covers like 50% population, right? And then, so they would say, and not just 50% population. Technically, in COVID times, they will basically argue saying that like, oh, you can be billionaire, and if you choose to go government hospital for COVID treatment, you will be free anyway, because COVID-related treatments are free. The problem with India...
But in government hospitals only.
Only in government hospital, right? Yeah. So, and then in some cities particularly, and some states, they are taken like some like beds from the private hospital as well.
Yeah, like in Odisha, they've... I had written an article about it also. Like, they've partnered with some private facilities, and they've sort of either subsidized or made it completely free.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think it's in every state.
Yeah, absolutely. So but then the problem on healthcare there is like, so the real point that opposition should make it, but then I don't know if they would, is the infrastructure provision. Like, so one thing that was absolutely clear, and that's like, so, well, I was in Maharashtra there, like, so first 2 months, the only thing that government was doing is basically taking grounds after ground, and then like, well, they had to increase the bed capacity by like 30,000-40,000. And so, what it basically tells you is like insurance is the one thing, right? Like you can insure people, and like multiple developing countries are moving towards universalization of health insurance of some sort, and it's a doable thing, right? It's that doesn't like I mean it's a doable thing. What is more difficult in Indian scenario, I think, is like actual that investment, particularly from the government side, which can build the infrastructure.
I think it's not about coming up with another scheme or another health insurance scheme or a subsidy, but actually about building a good hospital.
Yes.
Like, it needs to come to that. Like, we have an AIMS here, and then there was a series of AIMS that in the last 10-15 years that have come up, right? In different capital cities mostly. But the actual need is to have one AIMS in every 4-5 districts, because we have so many people.
No, absolutely. No, not just. I mean, so like we were just like a few minutes back talking about the rural India. Like, I mean, so I live in. Although my village is one of the richest district in this country, right? Even for there, like the government bed available, like you have to go 10 kilometers at minimum, and there would be 5 or 7 beds available there. And then like if you want like facility with like 50 government bed available, you have to go 40 kilometers, something like that. And this is like, again, I'm telling you about like one of the richest district in the country,
which is close to Pune.
Yes, which is close to Pune, right?
It's a huge city.
It's a huge city, right? And so, for multiple villages in this country, it would be a travel of like 5, 6, 7 hours before they actually get a bed in government facility.
Right.
right? So it's a, like from the supply side. I mean, of course, like you have, like if you can get a bed in government hospital, it's free treatment. But like, good luck finding a bed.
Or the government might say, okay, we're going to provide you the treatment, but bring your own bed.
Yes, absolutely.
Bring your own mattresses.
Yeah.
That is. I mean, it's easy to joke about it, but it's really.
Yeah.
It's an alarming situation.
Yeah.
But the thing with COVID is, for Maharashtra, it accomplished something that a lot of governments could not. People from UP and Bihar had to go back, like in a jiffy.
Yeah.
Like the governments have been trying to accomplish that goal.
Yes, absolutely.
But Corona came and did it for you.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, shouldn't Corona be the elected government there?
Like, technically it should. But then, like, again, as I was like, well, like, it's sad joking around that. It seems that like, both way though, the economy is so, well, our city economy is so dependent on labor from the India heartland. Businesses do get affected like really badly, and so that's what like people everywhere. I mean, not just Maharashtra, like Gujarat, Maharashtra, Delhi governments are realizing that now, and also like see from the people's side, like we're such a poor country. Like that's what like people just keep forgetting that like the reverse migration started right away. Like people like it's a
it only needed somebody to say, hey, you know what, offices will be closed for 3 weeks. And people wanted to go back because why would anyone want to pay to live in a city? Even for 3 weeks. Because it matters how much they're earning every day, not just like every month.
Also, even if they want, I'm 100% sure, although I don't have this number handy, like significant majority of them would like have no money to pay for the next day's food and rent. That's
what I'm talking about. It comes to how much you have for today. Like you and I can plan for the next month or so, or the quarter or the year. But for a lot of people, it's just a matter of today.
Absolutely.
If I can earn today to pay for today.
Yes.
And they have to go back. And that's why this issue of, the laborers coming from other states and working here, not just for Maharashtra, but any state. And subnationalism does become an important issue.
Yes.
It's just like, this disease is just showing you a big mirror that those are stupid issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, like, so let's...
Okay, not so stupid.
No, actually it's stupid, but then, like, it's actually a stupid issue.
Yeah.
But, like, here is completely different perspective and, like, theories on this. And so, the polarization is everybody's increasing, and nationalism, ultranationalism and authoritarian regimes are increasing around the globe, right? And so, there are two ways to deal with such situation. Right. So, what happened, let's say, like in India, in case, right, what has happened, it seems like a particular party can make an identity as one Indian, predominantly Hindi speaking, and like we are all Hindu, that kind of identity, and getting vote on that.
Right.
So, like making sure that like the majority of the country feel that they are Hindu, Hindi speaking, if not Hindi speaking right now, but then like let's say Hindu, right, and like think similar way and like create this national phenomenon, right? Now, if let's say a government is being authoritarian using this kind of identity, what's the way out of it, right? There are only two ways to deal with this scenario. An opposition or somebody has to come and give an alternative ideology which goes a step above this, which basically say like, no, come on, this is all bullshit. We are human and every human is equal. That's identity number one. Like you go a step above it. Otherwise, you go step below it and basically say, no, your languages still matter, your country. So one of the very funny way, and people forget it, like one of the reason India always remained united till now, and there wasn't like one really dominant party, like who could be like authoritarian party, was like, there was regional sentiments in this country.
Right.
And people like, they always said like, so in Tamil Nadu, they will say like, I like Tamil and like being Tamil in identity come before I being Hindu.
Yeah.
Right? Like you go a step down. I mean, in multiple ways, it's a bad thing. You are like, again, like, it can be identity politics and like there are multiple.
Right.
But in some other ways, people might just say that like, okay, in current scenario, you go a step down. Right? Like if everybody start believing that like, my language matters as well. Right? Like, and my sub-identities matter as well. This one thinking of like, that ultra-nationalism in some way can be dented. So it's a one way of thinking about it. And so one of the reasons people think that like, this Hindu identity becoming supra like identity is like, the regional identities and like the language and lingual identities are fading. Fading in the sense that like, people in Tamil Nadu now no more believe that like, they will ban Tamil.
Yeah. Also, I think it's the nationalistic wave that, it's ultra nationalistic or whatever you want to call it. I mean, just talking about the Indian context. I think in almost every state there has been a resurgence of the state player. Like most recently in Jharkhand, for example.
Yeah.
So in states, in non-Hindi speaking states especially, there is hardly any state where either BJP or Congress has actually been in the government for long.
Yeah.
Right? There were some smaller states in the northeast. But let's say Bengal, Odisha, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, or even Karnataka, for example, Andhra, like Telangana and Andhra both.
Yeah.
They have a very strong regional party.
Yeah.
And even Maharashtra, you can't like form a government without either NCP or Shiv Sena on the either side, right? So I think it's just any national narrative, in this case the ultra nationalistic one, needs a very a decent opposition, and people do want to listen to what the other party has to say.
Absolutely, and which is like really important. No, but then so there are two things that are happening. I think what like on the state level, people are thinking differently, but then when it comes to national election, there is this nationalistic identity around it, but then like what you said is completely right. The only thing I would add is it's absolutely necessary. So now like understand the COVID situation, right? Like the finances of the states are completely screwed up.
Yeah.
Right. And so, this is the time that like the central government will like try to suck as much power to them as possible. Right. And so this kind of like say regional voices, they actually need to be there, and they need to be like somehow even more stronger for next 2-3 years. Otherwise, like so the dependence on center for the taxes and everything has increased so much.
Yeah.
Right. Like again, like I'm saying, like my home state is the richest state in this country. Right. Like about 18% of the GDP, and like pretty high on the budgets and stuff.
Yeah.
For that, like on own revenues,
right.
The so-called richest state has to like basically. So the budget came a month before COVID situation, and like 60 to 70% of all approved and budgeted project, they have to stop. That's the situation, right?
Yeah.
And so each state is going to fail. And so this is the time when like, if you have a nationalistic, ultra-nationalistic government, which believes in like holding power to themselves, right? They have like one extra key to them right now here. And so that's why these regional voices somehow need to be like, strengthened like even more.
Yeah. I think there are more than one ways out of it. It's like not just subnational. Obviously, subnational is the easy way to do it, and it's like tried and tested and also appeals to people in general. But I think there's another way to do it, sort of that, the one that happened in Delhi. There was not a very strong subnational or city-centric argument, but there was general, we're going to do things, we sort of believe in providing solutions. And they won quite handsomely here, right? Despite a very polarized campaign. So I think that's also one objective, which regional parties can sort of build to. That, there's a subnational thing, but also we want to build a very solution-oriented government. That it's a bit tougher because you actually have to work. And in bigger states, it might be a challenge that, if somebody claims you're working, and then it's easier for the opposition to say, you're not working. Because this particular drain in my remote village is not fixed, so probably you're not working. So obviously it's not easy. But that's also one way out of this.
No. But then like again, so the problem there is like, I think that's already happening. Like, so the state after state election, national election, now people at least market that they are development oriented, and they promise these things, and they claim that they delivered on of this. This is actually happening, right? But the problem only there is like, it's easy to mislead.
Yeah, of course.
And like that's, Delhi is a very different environment, right? Like you can identify things. It's a city, like the kind of like voters here, and general education awareness and all of these things matter. Right. But then beyond that as well, like it just, so you can very easily just like almost create your own statistics. Right. And start like fooling people out. Also like better marketing work seems to be working better there than anything else, right? That's number one. I can give you like very funny example about that in a minute. But then like the second point I wanted to make here is also then development politics is very easily, even in the very sincere efforts, right? Identity politics wins against development politics. That's the unfortunate thing.
I mean, I'm saying you can do both.
Oh, you can do,
What I'm trying to say is, if
Yeah, you
you
can,
have
like,
to do identity politics anyway,
Yeah.
just combine it with some work.
Well, but then like if some people just say that like, oh, I have like so strong identity politics, I don't have to work and I can still win. Like, yeah.
Of course you can, but
Yeah,
like
no,
it's
no.
going to last only so much, right?
I agree. I completely will. I think
Yeah. Like in Tamil Nadu, for example, they have very strong identity politics, but
Yeah.
their system also works better than most other states.
oh yes.
Right.
Yes.
And it's partly true for Andhra also. Like southern states have a better functioning system than other states.
Yes, absolutely.
And so they combine strong identity politics with a very
Development
solution oriented.
And also like, well, so the politicians there, like, so the like examples are pretty like they take pride in like how developed their constituencies are.
Yeah.
People fight over taking development issues and development
Exactly.
projects to their constituencies, right? And it's not happening now. It goes back to like decades and decades,
Right.
And so like so so that matter. And so funny example over there, right? Like so in Maharashtra, if you go, so some of these like FDI or like foreign direct investments and related statistics and stuff, majority of the Maharashtrians would probably tell you that like Gujarat has like better foreign direct investment. Gujarat has more industrial investments on other things. And like so it's the marketing of brand Gujarat for last 20 years has been so. I mean it's like any number, like there are multiple statistics that like in any of this indicator like Maharashtra would be much better. Like there are indicators Tamil Nadu and others would be doing better. But then like if you ask in general to people, right, even for these development indicators, you go and like probably if we do a random survey, like where you think all health and education indicators will be good, they might just say Gujarat. So it's like, so if you again, not to say that like it's like rock bottom state, but then it's a state somewhere in middle which does like good marketing.
Marketing wise it's really good.
Yeah,
but it's also a rich state. Like it's not like you can only market a rich state. You can't say you can't market Bihar out of poverty. Is what I'm trying to say. You can't say Bihar is amazing.
No, but then like technically yes, like you can like you have to be somewhere in middle. You cannot be absolute rock bottom.
No. So the argument of Gujarat and Maharashtra, I understand that Maharashtra is like it has Mumbai and Pune, but otherwise Maharashtra is not very rich, right? Except for the Western Maharashtra.
No, I mean rural income in Maharashtra would be more than Gujarat's.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Right there.
So what I'm trying to say is that even if Maharashtra is richer than Gujarat, it's probably just a notch richer. Like if Maharashtra is number 1, let's say, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu is 1 and 2, Gujarat will be 4 and 5.
Yes.
It will not be 12 or 15.
Like I get that.
So that is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So you can market 4 and 5 to number 1.
Yeah.
But you can't say that same thing for Bihar.
Absolutely.
So there has to be some truth in what is being marketed.
No, actually, that's number 1. There is another way of showing it as well. Like so, in like let's say the like average income and other statistics, what you are saying is true. But like I mean, if you ask like law and order situation now, many people I keep hearing that like in many people's opinion that like UP seems to be doing really great, and I think it's coming to be the law and order state of this country now. Like to be very frank,
you're sitting in UP by the way. So. You're sitting in UP.
Yeah. So I'm fearing for my it's quite high that like in next 10 minutes somebody might walk in from here and kill me. No. It won't happen.
People love people from Maharashtra. We don't like harm you.
Absolutely.
We'll never ask you to go back to the state.
Yes. So but now like so the reason I got like the crime statistics here, right? It's I mean Kerala would be multiple times safer, right? But I don't think like the Kerala CM can be seen as a law and order CM. Like if you ask people around, like so that's where like see the marketing, right? It's than reality. I'm also pretty sure that like overall crime statistics and stuff, like although UP won't be rock bottom, it would be in the like.
Well, the thing with
lower
is it
half somewhere, right?
Yeah, I agree that the crime situation in UP is like among the worst, if not the worst.
Yeah.
But there are 2 more things. One is that it's closer to Delhi, so all crimes get picked up by the media.
Yeah.
Second is that when the pressure on resources is high, crime will naturally be high, right? Like we see it like in most places. Like whenever pressure increases in an underdeveloped society, the crime also goes up, right? And the third thing is that, although I promised 2, but there's one more thing. The third thing is that the incidence of this government acting against criminals has been continuously reported in the media.
Yeah.
So even if statistically the crime goes down or not, in news, in anecdote, it looks like there is some action against criminals.
Absolutely. So we're on the same page here. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's
the only difference is it's possible that the government is doing something.
Yeah.
Probably just shooting criminals.
No, absolutely.
But something is being done.
Oh no, I completely agree.
Now,
with that. No,
yeah.
but then the thing is, like, so acting, yes, right? But then, like, that doesn't make you the. So it's basically like saying that, like, so the Bihar, like, economic growth rate for last multiple years was like significant.
Yeah.
Right? That's very different than saying that, like, oh, the best growth-oriented person in the world is Gujarat CM. Right? It's
Bihar
CM. I mean, like Nitish Kumar, like Bihar CM, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's the scenario is different, and so that's what, so my whole point is like the marketing and making stature out of people on some of the issue is like pretty easy. That's
I feel bad for him. He's first sort of like this reformer in Bihar.
Yeah.
Only like a few years ago, and now like his political capital seems to be very down.
Yes, and it's okay again. Like I do think that like Bihar is one of the like really difficult state to govern, right? So again, like, so given the resources you have, right, and the problems you have, it's a really difficult state to govern. And then there was like zero hope for last multiple decades for that state.
Yeah.
With him came some hope, and it, like in between he did like using his both political as well as
he did decent, right?
Yeah, he did decent work. Like now it seems like going nowhere. And it's so like the reason it's really sad for not just for Bihar and people around, but then as like whole country and then even for humanity is the number of people we have in our heartlands, right? So like some of the Hindi heartland state need to start delivering better and like
I think the UP and Bihar there needs to be a national pressure on UP and Bihar to deliver.
Yeah.
Because these are not small states. Firstly, like one is 22 crore people and the other is 10 or 12 crore people. 10 crore people, I guess. So it's like combined the population of the United States, right?
Yes.
So it's a lot of people in a very small area.
Yeah.
And it's largely agriculture.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that whatever happens in these states affects the national indices, right? If fertility is high, it looks high for the whole country. If unemployment is high here, it looks high for the whole country. All of those things.
Yeah.
And migration. Yeah. And there's practically no industry. So I think there's a lack of national pressure also. Yeah. Like governments, like even other state governments need to like a little bit be on the front foot of saying, if India needs to move forward, these two states need to step up their game.
Absolutely.
Whether it is politically or whether it is like policy wise, even if they have to transfer some officers from like southern states, then I think that approach needs to be
but then the biggest problem there is like these two states by definition because of the population also have like a lot of political power just because the number of political
that's
power
what I'm saying.
And so it's a complete mismatch. The pressure coming from the opposition all other states almost need to be united in their voices that these need to states deliver better, otherwise it's politically it's very difficult, right? So the CMs and PMs and major ministers are always going to keep coming from these places otherwise.
Yeah, that's true. You have to be a PM through UP.
Yes.
No matter where you were born.
Yes.
So it's sort of like your national bona fide to being the PM.
Yeah.
If you not been in UP, you cannot be the PM.
Yes.
So I think there is strength in numbers after all. So you were telling me about the book you're reading.
Yes.
What's the book called? Narrow
Corridor. Yeah.
The Narrow Corridor. What is it about?
Yeah. So it's fun. I mean, just before it came out early, late last year, and early 2 months before COVID, I was actually reading through this, and it gives you it open. So just for the current scenario all across, even without COVID, as we were speaking about being authoritarian regimes and everything,
right?
It was very eye opener, right? And it's a way of thinking about the problem as institutional thinking, as people say it, right? It's a institutional economics, and people say that so why some countries stay poor and some countries do better as against the poor countries, over the year, there are some countries which will become richer,
right?
And some people will stay stuck in poverty or in poorness is because of the institutions that they have, right? And like, where do these institutions then come from? Like, and by institution is like, well, it could be media, it could be democratic institutes, it could be courts, it could be civil society and all of that, right? So like these are the institutions functioning, like election commissions and all of that, right? So the good institutions lead to development in in medium to longer term. So that's the thesis there, right? And like really sincere, like really good people who understand the development paradox well, they believe that like institutions matter, and institutional theory seems to be explaining most of this difference, right? And so the authors of this book have doing like phenomenal research for last 10 years on these issues. And so the institution matter was the one important thing that developed. But then the thing is, if the institutions are developed over last 100 years, then you're gone. Like India might just say that like, okay, we're going to take next 100 years to develop institutions. And then
what do you mean if the institutions were developed 100 years ago?
Oh, so
imperial institutions.
Where do the institutions come from? So there are like some feeding about okay, your norms, your culture, like your history, and all of these things do matter as well, right? And so in actionable thing, right, like how to build good institutions. And so then a new book talks about the narrow corridor, and like as the name itself suggests, and so narrow corridor of what? A narrow corridor of liberty, like so called like a liberal state, or like the liberal institutions of, and this is a corridor is very like narrow, and the reason it's and how does it is even a corridor? Like, so just think of like two axes, right? And so there is a one, let's say, bottom half of the axis where state is extremely weak, right? And then what happens is then like there are Turks around. That's like the humanity most of the time lived like that, like mafia Raj, right? And everything, right? It's a supremely weak state, and mafia and like small institution and religious institutions and all that will rule it, right? And there would be nothing there, right? Iraq and this pen, like so it you could be Iraq like with very less, or like part of Afghanistan.
I mean, why go that far? UP, Bihar. I mean,
okay, fine. I don't want to again be here and then get killed in next.
Let's go global. Afghanistan.
Yeah. So this those are some. And, to some people would say India isn't also great. Like somewhere, but then we won't be as bad. So So the think as that like the bottom side of that, it becomes you become Afghanistan or Iraq. Very like no military, very less state power, and mafia ruling the power, like places. Then there is a other front where state is so powerful, like that graph keep going up, right? And state is so powerful that it almost become like, okay, now like whoever's name I take, it's gonna be bad, but like let's say it become Putin. Now like see
or China,
or China, and then I just said like the minute I said China or Putin, there would be 10 others them saying like, well, what did we do wrong to not be on that list?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so then you become like complete authority. It become China, it become like complete like Putin and stuff, and then there is no voice from other side, right? And so the narrow corridor is basically of that liberty is a balance between these two, right? And so basically civil society, media, judicial, civil society, media in particular, and people protesting on streets, they push from this side, from the upper side of the graph. And let's say some of the state institutions, police and judiciary, and they push from the bottom, and so they both of them push each other, right? And that's when and in somewhere in that middle is that corridor. It's a narrow corridor, and that's how it become a narrower. Getting into that is difficult because as you would see that it's a very small place in between, and you are not guaranteed to be there. It's not the case that let's say it might happen that let's say next 10 years some point of time India go in that narrow corridor, somehow get liberal institutions, everything, get that fine balance,
right?
But then one thing changes and you can move down, move up, and all.
And has the book written about what those things can be?
Why things can go up and down? Yeah. Oh, Putin happens.
No, but then Putin happens or a strong leader happens is just saying that a strong leader happens. A strong leader will happen.
Yes.
Today or tomorrow.
But then, so strong. There are two things that would go wrong, right? One is strong leader would happen, and then civil society would not fight back.
But isn't it a given that a strong leader who only wants to rise or gain power for himself or herself will actually try to actively sabotage some of this
Absolutely.
civil society, right?
Absolutely. So it happened both ways. It's not just, let's say, strong leader. Like mafias would always be want to be rulers, right? From this side, let's say mafias or like some like civil society organization, they would also want to be powerful, right? And from the other side, leaders would also want to be powerful. State institution would want to be powerful, and so it is a simultaneous process. Like if one's just like
So you're saying there needs to be a continuous power struggle among many people.
yes,
all
many
the time.
people all the time, and then like one side keeps sleeping all the time, right? Like all remain powerless for some time, and then like everything changes.
I feel among all the institutions, the political institution is the most important. Like the opposition from within the political institution. What I mean is the opposition from other people who are in politics.
Yeah.
Like if someone is trying to attain too much power and he or she is doing through democracy by getting elected, then the other parties need to wake up and sort of try to get elected.
No, so but then so the reason they cannot do it in Wade, like they need like good judiciary for that matter, let's say, or good media. Like so, other institutions, right? They need support of other institutions to be actually be effective or like. So of course, good intent is a starting point. Like if I don't have intent,
Yeah,
like and
exactly.
if I don't want to be effective, like like I can be useless opposition. I completely like that. But then like just having good intent doesn't matter. Then that's where it comes. Like let's
Yeah,
say
effort
all
matters,
the
right?
police, all the military, all the media, all the judiciary, like everybody, let's say, is like somehow subverted, right? Like even like good intent and good opposition leader will take you like just so much. So
Yeah. No, I think then it's like the situation right now, for example, in many countries, what's happening is that people who are on the left or center left, whatever, they're just finding it difficult to create a narrative of why like the traditional liberal democratic values should be elected back. Like for example, in India, people do like whenever Congress loses, they're like, oh, secular politics is in danger and whatever. People get it, but people also sort of don't see how secular values or like secular democracy in general will benefit them directly. Right? I think that is the missing link
Yeah.
that people on the left are not able to communicate.
Yeah.
That having a secular country will directly lead you to making more money, for example, if you're a business,
Yeah.
or getting you a better job.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there is a direct link. Like secular countries in general do have a wider, array of jobs available. Like be it media or entertainment,
Yeah.
be it different types of industries. Like you don't have a big media and entertainment industry in China, right?
Yeah.
There are no stand-up comedians in China.
Yeah.
So in the US, where it's secular and you can say whatever you want,
Yeah.
there's a whole industry available. Like it's close to $1 trillion, like 700 or $800 billion industry.
Yeah.
So this is the missing argument, I feel, that people are not able to communicate.
No, so there are two reasons. I mean, like, so, well, more than that example, like for country like India, it's even like, well, the first order issue is like we have a significant number of religious mix here. Right?
Yeah.
And the minute, like, you cannot just have a civil war. And civil war would lead to you to nowhere, right? Like, so, so that's why we need secular institution is like, well, we need to treat everybody fairly. Otherwise, there would be revolts.
Yeah.
Okay, right? And then, like, so the social, like, cohesion or the social, the silence, like, well, the people, like, not revolting and not just being criminal. The reason we take it as granted, but then, like, just because we have had, like, secular institutions.
Right.
And then, like, it's important to even functioning as a country.
Correct.
Like, second order, like, I can understand economics and other returns to it. But then even first order, being as a country itself, like, together we are, has kept us alive.
No, but the thing is that when the counterfactual hasn't happened, when
Yeah.
people have actually not seen the country collapse due to absence of secular values,
Yeah.
they will not be able to value it.
Yeah.
Right? It's always harder to observe what is keeping the country together than it is to actually try to shut something and restart it. Right?
Yeah.
Like revolutions often tend to say, oh, we are going to burn everything down and restart it.
Yeah.
Because it's difficult to see what has led you to become sort of wealthier or like freer and whatever you're doing right now is because it was a tolerant country, right?
Yeah.
So people who are in politics from those ideologies that promote secular values or like a left in general, they need to be constantly like communicating this message that
Absolutely.
the reason why we have a functioning, not just democracy, a functioning economy is because we have the freedom to do whatever everybody wants.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So the moment the freedom of ideas collapses, the economy will also collapse.
Absolutely. No. So that's number. And well, I think we are 100% agreeing on that. And like I don't think I have completely anything to add there. The only thing I like, very fun things that I have been reading recently was like some data from US and Europe would say that one of the problem is not just like, so the problem is not just with the message but the messengers as well.
Right.
So the like so-called liberal elites, like, well, the way, I mean, like, some way we are part of it, right? So not just out of touch. Some of them, like, even if they are in touch, they are like supremely overly represented all across the globe. That's the problem. So it's a very.
What do you mean overly represented?
Like in US, right? Like Harvard and Stanford's and like others would probably give you. Probably Yale, Harvard, and Stanford would have like half of the judges on Supreme Court, the presidents and everything. Like Oxford gives you the prime ministers, right? And so just like and so like from both, like even on the Republican side or like Democratic side, or in the UK's case, like conservative or others, like even in Indian case, right? Majority of the Congress and BJP until few years back came from like, well, the law related background in political colleges and stuff, right? Like, so the messenger, also one of the reason, I mean, again, like I don't have India related evidence or data in it, but what's happening now is like, well, people from small places in Europe and like US and everything, they are seeing it as like, okay, the problem is not just message, but the people who are taking that message to them, these messengers, they seems to be like, well, they're not like me.
Yeah. Like, so even in India's case, if you firstly, a lot of people within like our like political parties, be it Congress or BJP, also have studied abroad, right?
Yeah.
But even if you discount for that fact, our elite institute would be, let's say, a JNU, right?
Yeah.
A lot of politicians have come from JNU.
Yeah.
Now say what you will about JNU, right or wrong, but it is an elite institute, right? Yeah. It's the only institute which has sort of featured in top university lists, right?
Yeah.
So it's elite in a way.
Yeah.
Now look at the example of India, just like isolate India from the world for a moment, and let's say a person who studied in JNU will be India's elite. A politician coming from JNU will be speaking in an elite language that people might not be able to connect.
Yeah.
And that is also a problem here.
Yes.
That the people who speak for left or liberal values, they speak from a very comfortable sort of bubble, which just resonates what they want to say already.
Yeah.
So then people sort of get you get disconnected with people.
Yeah, absolutely.
People are like, you don't make any sense to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. So one of the problem is like, of course, narrative is missing, and the people who are like this messenger who are supposed to take that narrative itself seems like outsider for many people, and so that's why it's a two-level mismatch, and like that harms. Like,
and also the middle class, like after the 1990s, after the reforms, about 30 to 40 crore people have stopped being poor. Right? Like from their families, probably through a generation or whatever.
Yeah.
But there is very less representation of middle class values here.
Yeah.
So I don't know why, let's say Congress shies away from it, because their policies created the middle class.
Yeah.
And now they don't want to represent them.
Yeah.
So it's just funny.
Yeah, it is funny. Yeah. So I mean, also like, well, I don't know what's going wrong there, but then like cities, right? Like it's like it should be the Congress bastion in general.
Exactly.
Just for this reason, right? But then like it seems that like, well, the narratives that come from the religious right-wing parties seems to be resonating much more, and it's weird because I mean it's unlike any other place. I mean like in as much as I know of the, let's say I know the data from like Germany, I know it from UK, I know it from US. Cities vote liberal predominantly.
Yeah. No, I think our cities also vote predominantly liberal.
2009. Like it's all Mumbai, all Delhi,
if you see
all Bangalore.
2014, if you compare the data from 2014 to 2019, you will see the BJP's gains in cities have been limited.
Yeah.
They have not been able to gain substantially in 2019 that they did not already gain in 2014.
Yeah.
they have expanded to smaller towns and villages in 2019. So that's where the votes are coming from. So, and also if you see on social media, it's like there's a lot of opposition to BJP policies in general among the young people right now.
Yeah.
People who might not have bothered with BJP in 2014, they sort of don't agree with a lot of their policies.
Yeah.
So it's not that urban Indians are not liberal, but I don't think liberal Indians are a critical mass. I don't think liberal Indians matter in winning a seat.
In a statistical sense.
So if a political party wants to win an election, it needs to sort of let the liberals be.
Yeah.
And focus on other people as well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, so have the narrative for them. Thank you so much, Vikas.
Well, pleasure was all mine. Like, it's great to be on here, Anshuman, and like, it's a privilege.